It's at this moment that we can bring changing technology back into the picture and realize just how much not only the state of the field of New Testament or ancient religion more generally has changed, but how we do things has changed. The out-of-print German edition of the Mandaean Book of John is not hard to get, not only because there happens to be a copy in CTS library, which I regularly check out, but because you can actually read and download this book, which is no longer under copyright, for free on the Internet Archive. Things have changed a great deal. Drower's book on the Mandaeans is also on the Internet Archive and can be read there. Ease and speed of travel has changed things in New Testament studies, and for me personally. And such realities of our time have brought Mandaeans to the United States and other parts of the world. But technology has opened other avenues of contact. A few decades ago, it would have been a privileged few Americans who had ever met a Mandaean personally or witnessed a Mandaean baptism. Nowadays, the Mandaeans are represented well on Facebook, and you can watch a Mandaean baptism on YouTube. Returning to the Book of John, manuscripts of this ancient text are to be found in the holdings of the Bodleian Library in Oxford and the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, but it's no longer necessary to go there and handle them and worry that you're going to break them into pieces if you're not careful. For a fee that's far less than the cost of traveling to England and France, I can have digital copies sent to me, which will not only be more convenient, but will help preserve the original manuscripts, which can be handled less often as a result. What's more, around the same number of manuscripts of the Book of John as are known to exist in the hands of Mandaean priests and their families, as are found in library collections. 60 years ago, the only way to get convenient ongoing access to these would have been to persuade the owners of those manuscripts to either make copies or to grant them to a library. Today, it simply takes permission from the owners of the manuscript, a laptop, and a scanner, and you can do what a collaborator and I have already managed to do with one such copy. This is an excerpt or a page from a copy of the Book of John that belongs to a Mandaean priest living in Colony, New York. The copy in question is a photocopy of a manuscript in Iran made by one of the informants of a famous linguist who worked on the Mandaean language in the mid-20th century. And so about 50 years ago, this individual didn't manage to obtain a copy of this particular manuscript. Today, a photocopy of it has come to the United States and can reach scholars without it being taken away from the actual owner. Ease of travel has also allowed those who study the New Testament to spend time in other cultures that are closer to the world of the New Testament, not only geographically, but also in terms of cultural values and assumptions. I often say that I never really understood the New Testament until I lived in Romania. Ironically, I was also able to shed some light in the opposite direction as well. When I lived in Romania, I already owned a copy of Bruce Molina's useful book, Windows on the World of Jesus, Insights from Cultural Anthropology, and subtitled Time Travel to Ancient Judea. Molina tells stories set in a cultural context that reflects what we know of the Eastern Mediterranean world, which shared cultural values that spread up into the Balkans and Southern Europe, as well as the Middle East, Asia Minor, and tells stories about people, supposed time travelers from the modern United States, going back to first century world of Jesus, trying to get things done and having things not turn out as they expected. And while this was intended to shed light on the New Testament, I would lend this book to colleagues from the United States and Britain so that they could figure out what was going on in Romania, which also shares some of these same cultural values and assumptions. And so the practical value of cultural background to the New Testament showed itself on these occasions. And so the changes that have taken place over the past 60 years or so in New Testament studies fits nicely into the theme of lost and found, but also the theme of history changing in ways that we're never able to entirely foresee and predict. Texts lost for more than a millennium, and in some cases more than 2 millennia, were recovered. Groups largely unknown and poorly understood in faraway lands have both become more accessible and at times moved closer to us. Technology has made it possible to access manuscripts and interact with people in ways that are not only incredibly convenient, but were probably not imagined by many, if any, 60 years ago. And so in closing, I'd like to turn our thoughts for just a few moments to our future. If I were to teach at Butler for, let's say, another 30 years and then be put in cryogenic suspension and frozen for 60, this is again an imagined scenario. I'm not making a suggestion, just to be clear. What kind of world would I find when I awoke, and what else might have changed in the field of New Testament studies? I admit that my imagination fails me as I try to guess what interesting finds or texts or technological developments might revolutionize yet again not only what we know and the raw data we have available, but also how we go about the work of teaching and research. And so let me instead just imagine what might change at Butler. I imagine that we'll probably have at least one new building on campus. I think that diversity will have increased even more than it has up until the present. I think we'll use new educational technologies, as well as finding some older ones are still useful. And perhaps, in the meantime, some endowed chair or other will manage to become neglected in the intervening years, and will be rediscovered and provide some future professor and his friends and colleagues with another opportunity to celebrate and speculate about the future, much as today. Thank you.